1 million Russian soldiers dead or wounded. A 1,000-year-old cathedral damaged. This week, you're in focus on two defying realities of Russia's war. One targeting Ukraine's soul, the other exposing the true cost of Kremlin's aggression. Let's break it all down and put you in focus on these hot events. This is UATV English. Be sure to follow us on YouTube and socials to stay ahead of the curve. 1 million Russian soldiers dead or wounded. That's the toll of the Kremlin's war against Ukraine, according to Ukraine's general staff. In just over 3 years, Russia has suffered more casualties than in all modern wars combined, from Chechnya to Georgia. Entire elite units have been decimated. Generals, pilots, special forces lost. To fill the ranks, Moscow turns to convicts, foreigners, and even the wounded and disabled. Meanwhile, Ukraine's defenders strike back with smarter tech and fewer resources, crippling Russia's navy, air force, and command structure. Ahead, the numbers, the faces, and the devastating truth behind Russia's so-called endless manpower.
In the full-scale war against Ukraine, Russia has lost over 1 million soldiers, killed and wounded, according to the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces. In its 34 years of existence, the Russian Federation has participated in several armed conflicts, but none have seen losses on this scale. Transnistria, both Chechen campaigns, and the war with Georgia are incomparable to the casualties in the war against Ukraine. 1 million exceeds the entire regular Russian army's strength before the full-scale invasion. According to the International Institute for Strategic Studies, in 2022, it numbered about 900,000 personnel.
The Russian Federation, unfortunately, employs tactics from World War II, known as Zhukovshchina, or what the Russians themselves call, "We won't spare any cost, women will bear more." The aggressor country's total mobilization reserve is around 20 million, so claiming that Russian command values the lives of its servicemen is completely contrary to the nature of their combat operations, namely the tactics of meat grinder assaults or banzai attacks.
Over 3 years of war against Ukraine, Russia has lost thousands of elite servicemen. According to the BBC, this includes Main Intelligence Directorate Special Forces, airborne troops, Special Operations Forces, pilots, and Marines, units that form the Army's core. Their training took years and millions of dollars. The BBC estimates that the 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet alone lost about 2,500 personnel, roughly 80% of its strength. Russia has lost at least 10 generals and over 500 lieutenant colonels and colonels. Analysts believe that without elite units and its officer backbone, the Russian army has significantly lost manageability and combat coordination.
There's plenty of cannon fodder. Combat-capable units are virtually gone. The latest glaring example is the deployment of an FSB regiment to the Kramatorsk front. That was a bold line under the combat capability of the Russian Federation's armed forces.
To replace the army's elite, the Kremlin has had to rely on hundreds of thousands of civilians and convicts promised freedom for fighting. According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, mass recruitment of prisoners reduced Russia's prison population to a historic low of about 350,000 in 2024. The agency estimates that 140,000 to 180,000 convicts are participating in combat operations.
Идет рекрутинг, я бы это так назвал, в...
Recruitment is happening at various levels in places of detention. Not only in colonies and prisons, but also when a person becomes an accused during investigations, when they realize they've committed a crime, and they're told, "Go to the front, you'll be free, but you must fight." This especially applies to criminals facing serious sentences.
Despite Putin's claims that Russia doesn't need foreign mercenaries, its army clearly lacks sufficient forces. The Kremlin is thus involving North Korean soldiers and mercenaries from other countries. According to important stories, over 1,500 foreigners may have been recruited in Moscow alone in a year. Recruitment centers are scattered across Russia, their exact number impossible to determine. Foreign citizens are offered jobs in Russia, then sent to military camps from which escape is impossible. According to Chinese prisoners of war, these camps lack electricity and water, provide food once a day, offer no translators, and all documentation and orders are in Russian.
In that place, besides me, there were about 20 others who came to register, all of different nationalities. likely from Central Asia, Kazakhstan, other countries. Only an approximation. There were also people from Ghana, Arabic-speaking individuals, and probably from Iraq.
Such recruitment methods cannot enhance the armed forces' combat capability. The number of wounded in the Russian army is so high that they are denied hospitalization and sent to assault Ukrainian positions.
I asked guys on the street. Here are guys standing with crutches, with canes, including me. Faces are barely visible, of course. We're going to fight the enemy. With Category D, they send everyone. Legless, armless, on crutches, blind, disabled. It's annihilation, simply, of us. They've arranged a genocide.
The 3 days Russia planned to capture Ukraine have stretched into over 3 years. During this time, the Kremlin has lost a significant portion of its armaments. According to Ukraine's general staff, nearly 11,000 tanks, over 22,000 artillery systems, and more than 51,000 vehicles have been destroyed. Losses have forced the Kremlin to empty warehouses in Siberia, per the UK Ministry of Defense. However, much of this equipment is in poor condition due to inadequate maintenance. Even this equipment is running out. Previously, there were mortars, towed artillery, self-propelled artillery, tanks, now mostly military trucks. Soldiers often have to procure their own weapons.
Сейчас российская армия во многом существует.
The Russian army now largely operates on self-sufficiency. Contract soldiers are paid large sums, which they spend on themselves, including buying transport, and they make do with a small amount of armored vehicles on the front. When recruits are enlisted, they're distributed across the front, joining existing units with some equipment, where they settle in, assimilate, and replenish those units.
The Russian Navy has also suffered significant losses. Ukraine's defense forces, leveraging new technologies and unmanned systems, have destroyed or damaged about a third of the Black Sea Fleet's ships, including the flagship Moskva, landing ships Saratov, Minsk, and Caesar Kunikov, missile ships Ivanovets and Askold, and the submarine Rostov-on-Don. Ukraine has achieved even more impressive results against Russia's air fleet. Per the General Staff, 337 helicopters and 416 aircraft have been destroyed. Ukraine's security service conducted an operation called Spiderweb, targeting 41 Russian strategic aviation aircraft at several airfields. The approximate cost of the destroyed aircraft is about $7 billion. The American outlet Clash Report calls the SBU operation unprecedented in cost effectiveness.
In terms of cost effectiveness, Ukraine's June 1st, 2025 sabotage operation has few equals. A single FPV drone used by Ukraine can cost as little as $300 to $600. In contrast, a modernized Russian Tu-95MS strategic bomber is valued at $100 million plus. This is over 100,000x cost gap from a publication by Clash Report on X.
Recognizing the effectiveness of unmanned systems on the battlefield, Ukraine is scaling up this direction. This approach preserves soldiers' lives, efficiently destroys costly enemy equipment and personnel, and delivers precise strikes on military targets in Russia. According to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, in 2024, the ministry, together with the State Special Communications Service, procured over 1.5 million drones. In 2025, this figure is planned to increase to 4.5 million units, reported by Nikita Skoblikov, UATV News.
In the dark hours of the 10th of June, a Russian missile storm hit Ukraine like never before. But this time, it wasn't just lives and homes under attack. It was history itself. For the first time in this war, the heart of Kyiv, the 1,000-year-old St. Sophia Cathedral, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was damaged. A symbol of Ukraine's soul, a sacred place where the state was born, now bears the scars of Russian terror. This isn't just war, this is cultural erasure, an assault not only on a people, but on memory, identity, and spirit. Here's what really happened that night and why this attack could become a defining moment for Ukraine and for the whole world.
In the early hours of June 10th, Kyiv endured one of the largest Russian air assaults since the onset of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine. The Russian army launched 315 drones and 7 missiles, including 2 North Korean-made ballistic missiles, targeting peaceful Ukrainian cities. In the capital, 1 person was killed and others were injured. Dozens of residential buildings and civilian infrastructure were damaged. The symbol of Ukrainian statehood, the heart and soul of Kyiv, St. Sophia Cathedral, was also struck.
The blast wave damaged the cornice and plaster of St. Sophia Cathedral. This is the first time during the war. Although our sites, over 20 across various locations, have already sustained damage, we found remnants of shaheds and missiles on our grounds. There have been explosions, but this is a first. It's very bad for the cathedral because, visually, we inspected and saw no damage beyond the plaster and cornice, but we'll conduct an instrumental examination. Microcracks that may have formed are simply invisible. For a monument, this is very bad.
The government assured that restorers will receive all necessary resources to begin restoration work promptly. Preserving the cathedral in its original form is crucial for Ukraine and global culture. St. Sophia, a sacred site for the Ukrainian people, was commissioned and funded by Yaroslav the Wise. It is the burial place of great Kievan princes. Over its 1,000-year history, Sophia has survived invasions, wars, and revolutions. Now, Russia seeks to destroy it.
St. Sophia Cathedral is an 11th century monument. It is Ukraine's #1 UNESCO listing. Historically, this is where our state was born 1,000 years ago. It's a symbol, the heart of our state. As an object, as a monument, it's a very fragile structure. At its age, it requires very careful handling, and any major stresses, in this case, vibrational loads, could even lead to its destruction. At one point, traffic was removed from Sophia Square to prevent vibrational damage to our monument.
The blatant act of Russian terrorism against the national and historical memory of the Ukrainian people will be discussed at the 47th session of the World Heritage Committee in Paris, announced Ukraine's Minister of Culture and Strategic Communications, Mykola Tochitsky. The Russian Federation not only kills civilians in Ukraine, but also aims to destroy cultural heritage sites. On the night of June 10th, the Russian army's massive attack also damaged the Odessa film studio, one of Europe's oldest. The 106-year-old studio is an integral part of Ukrainian history.
During a direct attack on Odessa, not the first, but almost daily on this historic city, the Odessa film studio was damaged. Specifically, the pavilion where the first feature film in independent Ukraine's history about Alexander Dovzhenko was being shot. He began his creative work there. The damage is immense because not only the pavilion, but also the sets, costumes, and all artifacts needed for filming were destroyed. This war is aimed not only at destroying Ukrainian territories and civilians, but also at Ukrainian cultural heritage.
Ukraine's cultural and spiritual heritage sites have long been prime targets for Russian occupiers. Since Russia's full-scale invasion, its army has destroyed or damaged 645 religious sites, completely obliterating 53. These include sanctuaries of Orthodox, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, Catholic, and other religious communities.
In addition to systematic shelling, Russian occupiers regularly use religious buildings as military objects for cover, ammunition storage, or personnel housing. This is a gross violation of international humanitarian law. Such actions may be classified as war crimes, subject to international investigation and accountability. As Ukraine's ombudsman, I call on UNESCO, the UN, and all international partners to provide a clear assessment of these crimes and strengthen monitoring of Ukraine's cultural and spiritual heritage sites. Dmytro Lubinets, Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, on Telegram.
Russia deliberately destroys significant and priceless Ukrainian monuments. The annihilation of national history and culture is a component of genocide. Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has urged UNESCO and the international community to intensify pressure on the aggressor state. Reported by Yulia Hranovska, UATV News.
Ukraine is standing in spirit, in strength, in sacrifice. From St. Sophia's battered walls to the enormous human toll on Russia's side, the stakes are clearer than ever. What do you think could finally help push Russia to the edge? Drop your thoughts in the comments and always stay in focus with UATV English.